This episode of the Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, listen to up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, or give us something to discuss in our new post-credit scenes at the end of each episode, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture. Right, Emily, do you want to kick us off? I'm kidding.
I'm kidding. You're not ready for that yet.
You're still the intern. Welcome along, everybody, to the Popture podcast. My name is AJ, and I'm joined by my friends Richard and Emily. Hi, guys.
Hey.
So today on the podcast, well, first of all, how are you guys?
I'm good.
I'm alright. I've got a bit of a sore throat.
Oh no. How are you, Emily? Is your throat sore?
My throat's fine.
Oh.
Sucker.
He dies. How do you feel? So this is our podcast, and today on the show, we thought we'd do something a little bit interesting. An idea which I was thinking about it. This could just be a podcast. The concept we're doing today could just be a podcast.
Yeah.
But it's not. Instead, we're going to blow it all on an hour of content for you today. And this concept is, I think the episode's going to be called something like Short Films versus their feature film adaptation.
Ooh, rolls off the tongue.
Well, you think of a better way to word it.
No.
Richard, do you have any suggestions for a title?
From short to feature. The Cargo, Whiplash, and Yes God Yes story.
So what we're basically doing is, you might not necessarily know this, but a lot of feature films actually begin their life as a short film. A short film gets made, and then usually the same people get funding to then make a longer version of that short film. It's happened with the likes of Taika Waititi with What We Do in the Shadows. I found out this week that Napoleon Dynamite was originally a short film. I found all these out because we told everyone the films we were going to do, and were then inundated with suggestions of other films.
You should have done this. Why are you doing this one? It's like, look, we just chose 3. Get over it, and maybe we'll, because this is like a pretty loose format. Like in a few months' time, we could just choose 3 more and do them. Yeah, let's do a part 2 if this one goes well.
So the films we did choose, I think, are pretty interesting because they all say something different about this process of short film to feature film. So as Richard said before, the films we are looking at are Yes God Yes, which the short film came out in 2017. I don't have any notes in front of me. And the feature film came out this week in 2020, which is why we decided to do this podcast, because I wanted an excuse to watch that film.
Yeah, because AJ has this weird thing about watching movies where he doesn't actually like doing it.
No, if I'm going to watch a movie, it has to be for the podcast, or it has to be like a new release, and I'm going to the cinemas to see it.
This has ruined your life, hasn't it?
It's ruined my life.
Because we were talking about what's like an easy kind of podcast we can do this week, and he's like, we should do shorts because I want to watch this, and I was like, you could just watch it.
Does anybody have who directed Yes God Yes in front of them?
Karen Main.
Karen Main. We're also going to be talking about Whiplash, which was a 2012 short film, and of course the Oscar-winning?
Yeah, one Oscar.
J.K. Simmons. 2015 film by Damien Chazelle.
2014.
And we're also going to be talking about Cargo, which is a 2013 short film.
Yep.
And a 2017.
Yeah.
Feature film. They're all, except with the exception of Whiplash, I feel like they're all pretty, they may be slightly obscure picks, like slightly off-center of the kind of broad pop culture that we cover on this podcast.
Well, yeah, it's going off like, one that like came out this week, one that, was actually won the Popture Oscars for Best Film of the 2010s, and one that you just have this personal connection to with Cargo.
Well, okay, we'll get to, let's start with Cargo, but just quickly, watch these films. At least watch the short films. They're all on YouTube. I'll link to them in the show notes. We will be talking in spoilers, but I'd recommend watching all of them if you haven't seen them. We don't make you watch the movies every week, so you can.
And also, like the shorts, especially like starting with Cargo, the short is the entire film with just stuff injected into it. So it's like if you watch this. How long is it? Like 5-7 minutes, something like that. You have the beginning, middle, and end of the film. But there's a lot of stuff inserted in there, so it's like we're not spoiling the film for you if you've seen the short.
Yeah, and who directed Cargo? It was
Ben Howling and Yolanda Ramke.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, so Cargo was one of the short films I wanted to cover because when I first saw the short film years and years ago, I thought it was a very simple, clean. It's a cool film. I don't know. I'm not blown away by it, but it's a cool idea. That is cool because it's the very nature of it doesn't need to be any longer. Than the 10-minute film.
Do we want to say what the plot is?
Yeah. So. Emily, would you like to recount the plot of Cargo for us?
Sure. First off, it's set in Australia. Well, no, the short film, it's almost... Is it entirely silent until
I think you hear hints of an Australian accent from the main guy.
But anyway, it's sort of classified as a zombie film, I'd say, and it's just about a man who wakes up from being in a car crash. His wife next to him has died, and his child's in the back seat. He then finds out that he's been bitten.
Because his wife is a zombie as well.
Yeah, by his wife who's sitting in, who died. And it goes through him, we all know the rules of zombie films.
Yeah.
He's been bitten, so he's got a short amount of time. And it's a really clever little, window into a full zombie story. Of what a guy does when he's been bitten. He has a infant baby that he has to protect.
An infant baby.
A
baby baby.
Yeah. Not an adult baby.
A fully grown baby.
And then he's got a map. He's got his infant baby. And he's got not a lot of time. So it's a clever little thing where he figures out a little contraption with his baby backpack.
Yeah.
A balloon to keep the baby quiet, and a stick with some meat on it, so that when he does turn, he's always
like a dangling
forward.
Carrot kind of thing. That he's
it's a dangly carrot. That's it.
So it's a clever little window into an already established genre that we all know.
They should rename it Dangly Carrot.
Dangly Carrot.
Dangly Seed. So it's worth mentioning as well. So this was made for the Trop Fest Short Film Festival. I was a finalist there, and then it kind of just managed to go viral on YouTube. And so this is because the three films we're talking about all kind of have different stories from where the short came from and then how that was adapted into a film. And this one is you have a short film. It's a 7-minute long story. And 7 minutes worth of things happen in that story. It starts, it climaxes, then it finishes, And I'm not sure if it was if this was an idea that the directors had where they were like, oh man, if only we could make our feature film, but there's this short film competition. If we cut out this and this, we could fit it into 7 minutes.
I'm pretty sure they had the first one. They had the short film first.
Yeah.
And then they were like, let's develop it.
Right.
So that's what it seems
like.
Yeah. But where it was some studio, or they took it to a studio where there was a lot of buzz around the short, and they said, let's turn this into a feature. So it doesn't. From what I understand, this one wasn't ready to become a feature film when it was made as a short.
It was only sort of thought of in expanding it into a feature once it became viral.
Yeah.
Viral zombies.
And then AJ, do you want to talk about what the feature film adds?
Yeah, okay. So because I remember when I first saw the trailer, I first saw the title, Martin Freeman to star in an Australian zombie movie Cargo on Reddit or something, and I was like, I've seen this film.
Yeah.
And the first thought I had was, why the hell would you turn this simple, clean little short film into a feature film. And so what it adds, it adds Martin Freeman in the main role, who is always a joy to watch. I love Martin Freeman. Yeah. He's such a good actor, and when watching him in this, it's just like, God, you give your all, even in these like little indie pieces, which is so cool.
I actually started watching Fargo again from the beginning, just because I need a bit more.
And it sort of expands the story to there's a little bit before the crash, so you see the wife get bitten. You see
they're living on a houseboat.
Yeah, they live on a houseboat. There's this whole like establishes their life living in the outback. It also adds a little Aborigine girl living in the outback, and she joins Martin Freeman on his journey to deliver his baby somewhere safe. And it has
the classic zombie movie trope as well of like finding refuge, and then the guy that runs the refuge is actually evil and like
It really just sinks into those tropes, and the feature just really finds a little comfy little spot and just
and one weird thing that the movie adds that I don't remember from the short is that like when you turn, your eyes and mouth like leak honey.
Yuck goo. What was that about?
A tree sap.
It was cool. It is. I guess it's supposed to be like a tree sap, but it looks like honey. And there's a bit because the first time you see it is when the wife's already been bitten, and they're trying to find a getaway car or some kind of vehicle to get it to, because they think they can still get her to a hospital at this point. And so she's in the car and with the baby, and he's putting gas in the car, and she notices on the seat that there's this honey. And I was like, oh my God, the car's filled with bees. What are they going to do? And I was like, what a weird, but exciting. It's not just a zombie threat. And then it turns out it was just a zombie
threat. Killer bees.
So yeah, it adds, and it's very video gamey in how it plays the story. Because it's less of an organic, unraveling narrative and more like, we've got to put 3 40-minute obstacles between the start of the short film and the end of the short film.
Yeah, well, and it's also like, the way the Aboriginal stuff is, because I kind of found that the most interesting, and it's one of those things that maybe if this film, if it hadn't been based on a short, I probably would have liked it more because it had that interesting like Aboriginal stuff laid in, but it felt so added. And it's, I'm not even talking about like from a forced diversity perspective or anything like that. It's just like
something we hate here at Popture.
But like I know that like the story exists in a really pure, concise form.
Exactly.
And then and so anything more than that, it's like, okay, I can understand stuff before the car crash. It's like that makes sense. That's like organic. But then this other stuff, it feels so like left field, and it's almost like if you're using the video game metaphor, it's like you just randomly play as another character every now and then, and you like, so you go in, it's like, oh, your wife gets bitten, cut to black, and then you're this random Aboriginal girl, and you do like a little fetch quest. Then you don't understand until the very end of the game, or like the start of the third act, why that one is there, and that's they link up together. But at the same time, I also found that stuff the most interesting because it was like a fresh perspective on the zombie genre, and because Cargo, for all its simplicity, and especially like a lot of stuff they added to pad it out to a feature film, is very tropey, and so it was cool to see this kind of more like of the earth Aboriginal kind of take on this pandemic.
And the way they told their story was pretty looking up the directors, they're both white people. So it's like they tread very lightly with it, and I think they did a good job with it, because I think that is the strongest part of their feature. The
thing that's not based on the award-winning short film.
Because the short film, when they're as you said, padding it into a feature, the short film concepts and themes just feel kind of watered down. So the added stuff with the Aboriginal people was like, it was cool to see like how in a zombie dystopia, the ones that are thriving are the people who are already in tune with the earth and stuff like that. And
it's like, why do we need a white man to be our inside of the story? Like, just give me an Aboriginal zombie movie. Like that's so much more fascinating.
It's such an interesting takeaway from this because I do like the feature film. I feel like you guys aren't as hot on it as I am. Just because it's a Martin Freeman zombie movie with badass Aboriginal characters, so it's like there is enough here for me to be like removed from it as a short film. Yeah. It's a cool film, but yeah, it doesn't. With my first thought when I first saw that trailer being, how are they going to turn such a designed for a short film idea into a feature film? They didn't win me over. They didn't make me go, oh, that's how you do it.
Yeah,
because there's actually quite a bit of difference because the stuff with... So to me, the crux of the short film is that really kind of... If it was more famous, I'd call it iconic imagery of this zombie walking with a pole out in front of him with the dangly meat and his baby on the back with the balloon. Like there's a balance to that image from like the profile, right?
And like a silhouette of that is like the poster,
the silhouette, exactly. That feels like that is the idea with which the story is built. Someone thought of that and based a short film around it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And in the movie, that part doesn't even happen till the end. And what it actually is that the girl has broken her leg or has hurt her leg, so she can't carry the baby. So he has to carry both of them. And it ends with the meat dangling in front of him, and there's no balloon behind him. And I was like, that's a shame. That's such a cool image. And it represents the old ways and the new way, you know, like we once had balloons, but now we're just looking at
have
death
flesh.
And so they took that out of it, and it's like, again, if you hadn't seen the short film, which you're probably not supposed to have seen it if you're watching this, because that part I could imagine being really cool if you hadn't already seen a better version.
I think it's interesting because. And I know that this isn't like how Hollywood works, but it feels like, you know, that like if they had this cool idea for like the Aboriginal zombie film, but it's like, why not just you be like, hey, we made this short film and like set in the same universe kind of thing, or like you know, proof of concept. We can make zombie films set in Australia. Like, look at this short. We also have this idea. Can we make that? Rather than being like, oh, we're gonna just make this perfect little short longer, and then we'll also just wedge this in there, and it kind of like when I was watching the short, because you and I watched the short years ago. I remember you showing it to me and being like, "Oh, Martin Freeman's going to be in a movie of this," but like, watching the short, there was it took away from it a little bit, knowing like, God, how are they going to flesh this out? And then watching the film, it took away from it being like, it just felt so long. I watched it this morning and I was like, and it went on and on and on. And when I was like, finally, this feels like the start of the third act, it's still like, it felt like this is the end of the film. It was still like 25 minutes to go. And it was just torturous to watch because I was like,
was that at the riverboat family, the family that was at the river? Yeah. Because at that point it's like, oh yeah, this is where we get the balloon, and this is where we get the ball rolling on the iconic imagery, and then instead people shoot themselves. It's like, oh.
And I mean, maybe that's intentional. Maybe it wants you to have seen the short film, I guess. But to sort of round up the cargo section of the discussion, the cargo bay of the discussion, it's interesting because it'd be cool to have these neat little different examples of what happens when you turn a short film into a feature. And Cargo is like, this is what happens when you turn a short film that doesn't need to be a feature into a feature, which it would be if there wasn't that really cool other angle on
I would say that's definitely what it is, though. Like,
fair enough. I guess it's just not I wouldn't call it a bad movie, though. Sure, but it's not like it is. This movie is better in 7 minutes. You know, like this is what happens when. I mean, because it's a reasonably well-reviewed film, from what I understand. Yeah.
What was that on Tomatoes?
Still on Netflix, I guess. It's 2017. It came out, and
Netflix just remove all movies that are bad.
It's
got 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, certified fresh. So it's like it generally is considered like a good movie, but
you can almost always like get a good movie out of like an Australian funded thing as well. I found it's just like
we all love a good
if it's made
Aussie
in the
film.
outback and like you get some alright actors, it's pretty good, even if it's bad.
Okay. Oh,
it's like
even if
almost,
it's bad, it's good.
It's like a seal of approval,
especially the bad ones.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess for we'll move on. But for me, if Martin Freeman wasn't in it, I think that Rotten Tomatoes score would be a lot lower because he's so compelling in this and in other things. All right. So, what film should we talk about next?
Let's go Whiplash, and then we'll build up to
sweet the newer film.
The newest film. We've got to stick around to see the week's big release. So Whiplash, we've spoken about it a few times on the podcast. It's the feature film is one of my favorite movies of all time. It famously won Best Picture at the Cult Popture Best of the 2010s, much to AJ's chagrin.
Yeah, that doesn't feel like an AJ film.
I like it. I think it's a great film, but it's more that Mad Max Fury Road is clearly the film of the 2010s.
I think it's Whiplash. So
we're not here to discuss this. This is not the purpose of this episode.
Whiplash is about an ambitious jazz drummer named Andrew Naiman, who enrolls at Schaefer Jazz School, and he ends up getting into the kind of studio band, which is headed by conductor. Terence Fletcher, played by J.K. Simmons, who won an Oscar for the role. And then there's also like a romance story, and then there's a storyline with his dad. And ends up coming to a head where...
Well, the crux of the film, I don't think we necessarily need to talk about the ending of Whiplash, unless it comes up, I guess. But the crux of the film is that Terence Fletcher is like a super hardcore...
He's like a drill sergeant.
Yeah, he's like a drill sergeant.
The film it plays out like a sports movie.
Sure. Yeah. So that's the feature film. The short film.
The short film is and it's actually because this is like an interesting thing about the different ways that things became went from short to feature. Damien Chazelle wrote the full script for the feature film and couldn't get funding for it. So what he did was he took one scene, which is about 18 minutes long, from his feature film script, and then just made that as a short film on a much smaller budget. And then it did very well at Sundance. At Sundance. And then investors got interested, and he was able to produce the full script. But it was a weird thing then because it was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay at the Oscars, even though it wasn't adapted from anything, it was just because it was a full script, and then he made one scene of it, and then so the full script is based on that one scene which existed first. But anyway,
the Oscars being finicky and weird about dumb rules.
But yeah, so it's the scene. If you've seen the movie, it's like his first day in studio band. So it's just from when he comes in, he has to tune the set up until the full rushing or dragging discussion. And it's also it doesn't star discussion. Yeah, it stars Johnny Simmons as Naiman, who no relation to J.K. Simmons, but you might know him as young Neil from Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
Oh, of course, and it's Miles Teller in the feature film.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's interesting about this? I'm surprised it did well as a short film, because this is not a short film. This is a proof of concept. It literally is. I'm not just being colourful with my language. That's what it is, right? It just is a proof of concept. Because what struck me about it is I've seen Whiplash, the feature film, once in the movies. I don't really remember it. So I watched the short film, and it doesn't really have an arc that wraps up. It doesn't come full circle. I can't for the life of me pick up on the narrative thread that justifies it being a short film. And then when you watch the feature film, that small section of the film that the short film is, it's insane how identical it is. The shots are the same, the the lines are verbatim, like they haven't changed the script at all, but even like the nuances in the acting is exactly the same. Like he's counting Andrew in, so he's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and Andrew does it too fast and he goes, whoop, no, sorry, on my time.
Yeah.
And that happens exactly the same in both the short and the feature. And I don't know if it's useful for a discussion about short films being turned into feature films, but it certainly is an interesting insight into what might look like spur-of-the-moment improvised acting that's actually like meticulously planned and crafted and rehearsed and done over and over again.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I had seen the short film like, years ago when Whiplash first came out. I was like, and watched it and sort of observed the same kind of things. But yeah, it's just like a low budget. The lighting isn't as good. The set isn't as meticulous. But it's interesting because J.K. Simmons' performance up until he snaps, he's much better in the movie, I thought. And it's like J.K. Simmons is a fucking incredible actor. He brings it to every single thing he's in. But it is a very interesting insight into like how different a performance can be, and just in microscopic ways. When the movie of Whiplash, so much of the production of that on set and the pre-production would have been into crafting this character of Terence Fletcher and making and forming an Oscar-winning role. But then on a short film, it feels like there'd probably be a lot more to think about, and it's like you just you need to get it done. And so when it's kind of just like you come in and you go, yep, cool, 1, 2, 3, that it doesn't feel as fully realized as a character. But when you're doing this for the film was shot in like just under 3 weeks. When you're doing this for 3 weeks every day, playing this character, and you've got a full script, and you're doing scenes every day to really get to know this character. Those little bits where it's just 1, 2, 3. Oh, how we've got a squeaker here today. They feel a lot more lived in.
Yeah, and I'd say as well as like the short film feels like, say, I don't know how much if we have the budget for the short film, but say it's like 10 grand, right?
Yeah, it'd be a lot more than that. But
most of that goes to hiring J.K. Simmons.
Yeah.
Right? The budget of the short film is spent on J.K. Simmons. If we can get one at the time, probably C-list actor in our film who's somewhat recognizable, let's get J.K. Simmons, the guy from Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And then the feature
voice
film.
of the yellow M&M.
It was John Goodman. It used to be John Goodman voiced the yellow M&M. And then as you say, the feature film was like, right, now we've got a bigger budget. Let's win a fucking Oscar.
Yeah, now let's get fucking Miles Teller and
Miles Teller, who you made a joke recently on our Fright Night episode, Richard, where you said that casting Christopher Mintz-Plasse in a movie is a very 2011 thing to do.
Yeah.
Casting Miles Teller is a very 2015 thing to do.
2014.
2014, 2015.
24.
Whatever.
Well, he was in Fantastic Four in 2015. But you said Whiplash was 2015 before, and I corrected you, but it didn't sound like you hear me.
I didn't, because I saw it in 2015, and that's all that matters to me. I've been writing it as Whiplash 2015 everywhere. On the tweet I did, on Discord,
I'm surprised
on
you're
Facebook.
not in jail, mate.
Yeah, I should be going to jail.
Ruthless.
Can someone please Terence Fletcher me right now about getting...
Well, the language is too problematic.
Yeah, that's true. That's also very 2014.
What? Yeah, but at the same time, I actually watched a really interesting video this morning that was a review of Whiplash by a jazz musician. And so there was a lot of stuff that he's like, this is some stuff that they got like that's right. This is some stuff that's like almost there, and then this is some stuff that's like quite wrong, and this is some stuff that's like really wrong. And the homophobic slurs, the vague misogyny. He said it's unfortunate, but it's unfortunate, obviously. But
what does milking the cunt mean?
I found out the answer to that because it's always bugged me in the movie. But we'll get but yeah, he's just said like, it's unfortunate, but there's a very specific type of person you meet in these circles who are like, the old school kind of guys. And it's really yeah, it's like a really good portrayal of that kind of thing, but like, you know, turned up to 11 a little bit. But you mentioned milk the cunt. So
which for context, which it probably needs, is it's something the lead.
He's one of the lead.
He yells out just before they set up their instruments.
Yeah, so it comes in. Naaman's the first person in there, and this happens in the movie and in the short film.
So we can talk about it.
Yeah, but just saying that it's I always thought this was weird. I've always meant to look this up in the movie, but yeah. So Naaman comes in and he's kind of just like observing the room by himself, and then the drummer comes in and says, "Tune my kit to B flat," and then so Naaman he sheepishly goes, I
can't do it on my own.
Can I get a B flat from the piano? And he gets it, and then he goes, one more time, and then so he's very sheepish, and then everyone sort of starts getting ready, and then one guy like screams, "Milk the cunt," and then everyone kind of like gets ready, and then J.K. Simmons walks in, and so I always thought I'd like misheard it, and it's like, "Here's the cunt," kind of thing. Like he's just saying like, "Oh, Terrence Finch is a massive cunt." But I was like, I couldn't, obviously not here's, but like milk must be in this context is like the cunt is like on the other side of the door, you know, like he's calling him. But what it actually is that it's supposed to show the juxtapose what Naaman was doing before, like sheepishly asking for the key, because milk the cunt is saying play a middle C so that everyone can tune to that. And so it's like your Naaman comes in and goes, "Oh, can I please get a B flat?" And this guy just, you know, confidently screams, "Milk the cunt." And everyone in the room knows what it means and is able to get their instruments in tune.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I still don't quite understand.
Because it's a big brass and, you know, they're a big band and they all need to tune to a certain key. So the guy says "milk the cunt" as slang for play a middle C. Yeah.
No. Okay.
So
middle
everyone
C.
can go, "Oh, I hear the middle C. Does my instrument sound like that?" Yeah. We're ready to go.
Cool.
But I do prefer, "Hey, J.K. Simpson's coming. The cunt's coming. Milk that cunt.
Milk that cunt. Milk that cunt for compliments. I need validation from Terrence Fletcher."
Anyway, it's probably the most times we've ever said cunt on a podcast.
Won't be if we can beat this record next week on our Pirates of the Caribbean episode.
Pirates of the cunt.
Oh my god.
The other C word.
But it's funny how much you spend thinking about the music though, because like I feel like a lot of people get stuck on like being about jazz and being about music, when before you said it just plays out like a sports film. Like it plays out a certain way where like you don't even have to know if they're doing the proper things that deserve praise or scolding, because like the character of J.K. Simmons, whether Miles Teller's character is doing a good job or not, J.K. Simmons' character has no grounds to be that be that abrasive with him.
One interesting thing that the video I watched mentioned as well is that like any character who speaks isn't playing their instrument perfectly. Whereas like all the other ones are, because you know, like the other ones it's like just come in, you just have to sit there and play your instrument. But if you have like speaking lines, you need to be in the Actors Guild, and it's like you're an actor first and pretending to play the instrument second.
It's funny.
But he said like things like that are just like, I'm here, you know, it's like I'm the nerd about it, so I understand that most people won't pick up on that kind of thing. But yeah, I always, following on from what you said, Emily, and what I was saying earlier about the sports film thing, is that like I always point to this as an example of good direction, because it's like, who gives a fuck about jazz drumming? But it's like
exactly.
It's about jazz drumming, which is like, it's such a niche thing. And then
LeMayo, nobody cares.
And then but it's like, it plays out, it's structured like a sports movie, but it feels like a fucking horror movie. Like every single time I watch this, as soon as the credits roll, I realize, oh my god, I haven't taken a breath in like 15 minutes, because it's so tense. But yeah, and it's like that's what direction is. It's like it's how you feel while watching the film. Is like, that's the director's job, to craft that.
Yeah, like I've never been one to really side with Miles Teller, but like this movie makes me want him to punch J.K. Simmons in the face, you know, or do that via a drum solo. So it's pretty cool that it's directed that way.
And to bring it back to the short film discussion at hand, I think the direction is real slick in both examples. So this is, to me, other than, as you said, the performance being more refined, this is a 1-to-1 comparison. It's just a scene from the movie. The movie overwrites the short film in this case, which I wouldn't.
Yeah, the short film is no longer canon.
Yeah,
It is interesting as well. It's worth mentioning. So this is Blumhouse, the horror studio made Whiplash.
I forget sometimes they do good things.
Blumhouse do great things, don't they? Or they either do real good things or things you're not going to see.
Well, they do like pulpy horror movies or like real shitty pulpy horror movies. And Whiplash was like for a long time was there like from the studio that bought you Whiplash, please remember. And so I think it was like Jason Blum
comes out and it's like from the studio that bought you Whiplash.
Jason Blum essentially, I think like the script came across his desk and it was like maybe wasn't ready to take the risk just yet because they were kind of building their name as a studio, but he Blumhouse and Right of Way Films helped be like, okay, maybe we can, because it is a proof of concept essentially more than a short film, like you said, that it's like, okay, choose 15 pages from the script, we'll turn it into a short film, and then let's see if we can get people behind. So I think it's probably like, it probably played at Sundance being like, this is a scene from my screenplay Whiplash, does anyone want to make it?
Yeah, okay, well that's more interesting, because as I said at the start, I was trying to like, how does this work? Trying to figure out how does this work as its own short film. And if it was shown under the context that it doesn't.
I don't know that it necessarily was shown under that context, but you'd have to imagine it was in some way.
Yeah. All right.
Which, it's just interesting that like the film is about obsession, someone having crazy ambition, even faced with the adversary of bring me pictures of Spider-Man. And then like the director's going through the exact same thing where he's like, I have a vision, I want this to be made, and I'm going to have to make a short film to do that.
Wow. Yeah. And I don't know how to play drums.
And I don't even, who gives a fuck about drums?
Cool. Okay, well, let's move on to the final film we're going to talk about tonight, or today, whenever you're listening to this. Maybe you're listening to this outside of time. I don't know.
And you're listening to this on the land before time.
The other film we watched was Yes, God, Yes, which is a film. So the short film came out in 2017, and it stars Natalie Dyer. Both the short film and the feature film star Natalie Dyer, who plays Nancy in Stranger Things. And it's essentially about a young Catholic schoolgirl who is having in the midst of like a sexual awakening, and is questioning, is this okay? Should I be feeling this way when her Catholic school is telling her, no, you got to save sex till marriage, and you can't masturbate. And
you can't toss anyone's salad.
Yeah, you can't toss someone's salad. And it's sort of her going through these like confused feelings, and then the short film ends while talking to like the father, the priest. The father, he's like the principal of the Catholic school. The father, he leaves the room briefly to go get something, and his screensaver pops up, and porn is on his screensaver because it's saved to his computer. And then she goes home, chucks on Titanic, and just goes to town.
Fucking goes handy.
And it's to me, I really like the short film because to me, it's. Especially having grown up in a religious background, to me, it's like all those feelings you have that you're worried that you're the sexual deviant and you're this evil, gross little cretin bro. Everyone fucking is doing it. Everyone is horny. And I think that was a really effective short film. But in comparison to Cargo, in the case of Yes, God, Yes, I actually do think this is not necessarily improved, but like the feature film doesn't feel like it's stretching out. Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's stretching out those core components. Because if I have any criticism of the short film, it's that the start happens, then sort of it feels like something else needs to happen, but nothing happens, and then the end happens.
Yeah, I would say, the film has a little bit of the feels like something else needs to happen. It's quite a short film, and it feels like it could do with another 15, 20 minutes. But this one's interesting because watching this short film 3 years ago when it came out, I was like, this just feels like a scene from something. Like it feels like I haven't seen the whole story. Where like similar to Whiplash, but and very different from Cargo. But it was like, I was like, well, where's the rest of it?
Absolutely,
you know? And I actually thought because how long is the short film? It's like 8, 9, 10 minutes. And so I was like, I thought, oh, it must be a 20-minute short, and I've only just seen a preview of it. And like,
really?
And so for a long time,
full
actually,
story arc,
probably until this week, I was like, I thought I'd only seen part of the short film, but I'd actually seen the whole thing.
So with the short film, in a similar way to Whiplash, the scenes that are replicated in the feature film are almost beat for beat, right down to like the individual words selected. Some of the actors are different, the locations are a bit different, but it's beat for beat the same thing. But it's instead of Whiplash, where it's like you're watching an unbroken 20-minute section from the film, the short film compared to the movie for Yes God Yes is sort of like you see the beginning of the film, you see maybe a third of the way in, and then you see the end. And the feature version has those scenes in it, and then there's this whole new concept of them going to a retreat, a Bible camp essentially to get pure, where a lot of the same beats, kind of like emotional beats, kind of happen to her there, and then it ends with the exact same scene of her just rubbing one out to Titanic. It's set in the late 90s as well.
Early 2000s.
Early 2000s.
Because
that is
based on the phone technology, it's definitely early 2000s. But it's interesting. I felt weird about this film because I thought that the short was a cool idea, and knowing that it was being made into a feature film, I was kind of excited to see that. However, I couldn't get over the creepy cult that she was a part of, and
Catholicism.
Like genuinely, it made me. And it's like I know because reading the Reddit discussion thread for this film, every single comment is, "Oh my god, I grew up Catholic. This is the funniest shit I've ever seen." And it was like there's stuff that I understand these concepts, but fuck, it's creepy to see like these 16-year-old girls be like, you better go tell father you want to masturbate, and it's like, how fucked up is that? Like, it's so like terrifying. Like, you could change nothing about this film and be like, she's in a weird fucking sex cult that like there's no escape from.
Yeah. It's Midsummer. It's the sequel to Midsummer.
But like, and it's genuinely like the film made me so uncomfortable. And not even from just like the watching a 16-year-old girl masturbate with a broom. But it's like
it's such a good scene. That was so funny.
But it was like and then also there's a bit when like this is like a personal thing of mine, but there's a bit where she's forced to clean the kitchen, and she and there's a bunch of like food in the sink, and she has to scoop it out. That is like one of my pet peeves. I like food in the sink is like the grossest fucking thing I can think of, and she has to like hold it in her hand for like a scene, and it was like it made my skin crawl, and it's like this film just like did not sit right with me, because all religions are the same, and they're all weird.
Well, imagine if you had been a 16-year-old girl before who had a sexual awakening watching Titanic. Imagine how weird and uncomfortable you would feel watching it.
Because we could cut this out if you feel it's too personal, but so many things happen.
When did you start masturbating?
No, so many things happen in this movie, and the laughter you gave it was like, Emily gets this in a way that I definitely don't. And like when she goes to masturbate to Titanic, you were like, why would you go in from the top of the skirt?
You got a skirt. There's easy entryway, but I get it. It was for,
it looks better on film.
Yeah, it looks more cinematic going in from the top. But
So me, it's funny. We've got a spectrum here where Richard didn't get it at all. Emily got it from the female perspective, and I got it from like the religious background perspective.
Yeah. It's not that I didn't get it. It's just that it makes me uncomfortable.
Just unfamiliar.
But just to clarify, it's the the religion that makes me uncomfortable, and not the female masturbation.
And
I
not
love
the underage.
female masturbation.
But like speaking from a more objective kind of film perspective, it is cool, but I didn't love it as much as I thought I probably would. So the film, the discovering father watching porn happens differently. Where it's the scene where she's actually holding the gross sink food in her hand.
You're like, it's the scene where she's holding the gross sink food in her hand,
and she ends up in like a closet and sees him presumably masturbating to the porn, because we see him reaching into his pants, but it cuts away, and he's like full on watching porn. It's not just she sees it on his computer. And then at the end of the film, she's like, I have to confess one of my sins, which is like a weird thing that you have to do, I guess.
Okay, for the record, I was raised Protestant. You don't have to confess anything. You don't have to confess shit as a Protestant. And that is why my like creepy religion is better than this creepy religion.
Yeah, and she says, I watched people have sex, and she describes the porn that he watched, and he's like, oh, and then the film, and then it cuts to the like Titanic masturbation scene, but it's like, it feels like, the whole film is like building up to all these dominoes falling in a revenge plan, and we see her flick the first one, and then the film just ends, and it's like, I want to see the rest of the dominoes fall.
Right, yeah. Well, she does convict a young boy who's been spreading rumors about him, and her she frames him for going on dirty chat sites on the
but I don't know, I think I'll just like another 5-10 minutes of just the next day at school, like, is what I wanted to see. Where like I wanted to see more of the, and I guess it kind of is like not like an ambiguous ending, but it's the promise of more with her masturbating to Titanic, that she's like taking charge of her sexuality. But
exactly, and I think that's also something admirable about both the short film and the feature film, is that I'm not going to say it's not anti-Catholic, because it kind of is, but it's not in a way where by the end of the film she realizes Catholicism is wrong. No. It ignores that angle, and is more like, it's not that Catholicism is wrong, it's that owning your sexuality is perfectly okay.
Yeah. I do just want to like, because you talk about being raised Protestant. I went to a youth night, like a youth group, twice.
Shit.
So I do understand a little bit. That's all. Like,
so I think I'm qualified to speak on the subject.
I got your whole philosophy down in those 2
nights.
Was
like, it was just fun, like one night a week. I mean, I did like literally 2 or 3 times. But then there was like the weird bit at the end where they're like, all right, everyone, hold hands and pray or whatever. And
my favorite bit.
Yeah. And the youth leader who's like, hey bro, you remind me of me.
Yeah. Those moments, they were just like, they were, because like, I mean, I haven't had as much of a religious background as you, AJ, but like, I think I've piggybacked off yours a bit since we've been friends for so long. Like, there's been moments like Easter camp and like going to youth groups, like you said, and like, shit like that. Those moments in the film where they have the different people that you see at youth group, it was just like, oh, this is painfully real.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I didn't experience a lot of the kind of creepy stuff as a Christian, but I'm also a man, and I presume that the men get a lot less creepy growing up in the church.
100%. I think that's kind of touched on the film, but it's like, I mean, it's baked into the language of the film that it's like, a female sexuality and empowerment is kind of a longer road. But yeah, and Natalia Dyer's,
I want to be sexually empowered too.
Natalia Dyer's performance in them at both the short and the film is great as well. I thought she does a great job of being like, because the actress herself is gorgeous, but she does a good job of playing like she's still like pretty in the film, but you can understand why this person would be like self-conscious, and she's like a little bit awkward, and it's not just like the Netflix thing of like, let's just have some supermodels done up and then just they go, oh my god, I hate the way I look, it's like she like the way she holds herself embodies that kind of lack of confidence that and I thought it's like did a good job of making the casting match the character.
Yeah, she's the J.K. Simmons of the film, I think we can all agree. Cool. Any more thoughts, guys, on... Have we learned anything today on the differences between short films and their feature film adaptations?
Is Yes God Yes, like, do we know anything about the story of how that started as a short? Like, was it a short that then they were like, oh, let's make this a feature, or was it a feature that they took a scene from? Because, like, if you'd asked me, I would have just said, like, they made the feature and then released a couple of scenes from it and a deleted scene as a short film. Like, I didn't notice any difference between the scenes that are in the film and the short film.
Yeah. Well, I know that the director of it, she also made Obvious Child.
Yeah, she wrote that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then also the short film for that. So maybe that's just her process. Yeah, she makes a short film first as a proof of concept.
Like she just starts writing, and once she's got she's like, oh, there's gonna be a feature. But once she gets like a dozen pages, she's like, well, I'll just make this.
Yeah, well, it could, I don't know, it could just be a kind of a more depressing story that, like, as a woman, she can't get a feature film made, so she has to make these proofs of concept.
I liked my fun one though.
No,
because I think that that the framing device is pulled out of the short film. Because the framing device of the movie is that they're at a camp.
Yeah, and there's the, like, question the first thing.
Yeah, there's that whole thing. So the short film is almost like it's the emotional beats condensed. Whereas the feature film is allowed to sit.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it, actually, because it's like you're taking the emotional arc of the film and condensing it into however many minutes it is, whereas Cargo is you're taking the, like, it's the masculine versus feminine storytelling. It's like this is the feminine storytelling condensed, whereas Cargo was the masculine storytelling condensed. And that it's like we see the masculine and feminine. You know more about it than I do, AJ. Do you want to?
Yeah. So essentially, Yes God Yes is the thematically both the short film and the feature film are the same thing. Thematically, they communicate the same idea, whereas Cargo is practically they communicate the same idea, but what Cargo, the feature film, is thematically about is much more rich and developed than the short film.
I was throwing to you to explain masculine versus feminine.
So masculine is the stuff that happens in the external, feminine is the stuff that happens on the internal.
Yeah, and that's some person's theory of film.
Brian McDonald, yeah, we've talked about it a couple of times, but not nearly enough to be that vague and like about it and not explain it immediately.
Just dip it in.
So I apologize.
But yeah, like it's the internal condensed, whereas it's like
nice. Okay, well, hey. I'm keen to know what people listening thought of either the short film or the feature film, or like if there's any kind of recipe. Is there something you should do? Is there something you shouldn't do when translating a short film to a feature film?
Yeah,
I don't know. There's a lot of questions there, and maybe we do just need to do a part 2 of this episode.
Well, it'd be interesting if we do a part 2, like if people, because I know people are just like, oh, do this one because it's one I know of, but like it would be cool to. If people know of like ones that have different stories from how they made, like from the story from going from a short to a feature, because that to me is the most interesting thing to explore.
Well, another one actually that we could do in a part 2 would be District 9 is based on Alive in Joburg, which was a news piece, and I wonder if that's got a different story behind it. It's not a real news piece, but
no,
of course. Sorry. So I wonder if there's something in there. So ones people have suggested is like Whiplash. We just do Whiplash again. So Napoleon Dynamite, What We Do in the Shadows. What did other people suggest? There was like. Well, it doesn't matter. Can you think of any others, Emily? No? Doesn't matter. Oh, there's a New Zealand one. Gary of the Pacific is based on Only Son.
We got a good backstory.
Is that based on Only Son?
Yeah, it's based on Only Son.
Wow.
And as much as
it has the same actor in it.
It has the same actor in it, and it's about like him communicating with his dead dad.
Oh wow, I had no idea.
The rest is basically made, from scratch. So thank you very much for listening, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. And please stick around for our post-credit scene after the music playing right now comes to a close. And if you liked this episode, then you can like, follow, and subscribe to us on all the social medias. And also join our Discord where all the conversations happen.
All the social medias. Check us out on that one that only Zack Snyder uses.
Oh, what's that one?
I don't know. There's that one. There's some social media that like it's like, oh, Zack Snyder released still from the Snyder Cut on like some fucking thing that it's like.
Find us.
Is he the only person that uses this?
Subscribe to us on the Jeremy Renner app.
No, that's shut down now.
Oh no. What about Quibi? I've missed the whole Quibi thing. I don't know.
It's not a social media, but Vero
it's almost
is
gone.
Is his thing.
Well, hey, I'm keen to know what people think, so drop your thoughts below. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye!
Bye. Check us out on Vero Insurance, New Zealand.
Welcome along, everybody, to our post-credit scene. This is a scene brought to you by our Patreon, where if you donate $5 or more, you can give us a little topic to talk about. Richard, how are you?
Good.
So this question comes from our good friend Nadeshta Sim, who's on our Patreon, and she asks, what do you guys think is the most perfect piece of casting ever? Someone who will play the role so well that literally no one else could top or even match their performance. Here are a couple of mine in case you need some inspo. Robin Williams in Aladdin, Jim Carrey in the Ace Ventura films, Florence Pugh in Little Woman, Frances McDormand in 3 Billboards, and Timothy Chalamet in Call Me By Your Name. Those are real interesting examples because I agree, Robin Williams, Aladdin, sure, Jim Carrey, no one else could do Ace Ventura. I don't know if I agree with Florence Pugh in Little Woman. I don't know if she owns the role in the same way Tony Stark or Robert Downey Jr. owns Tony Stark. She's good at it, but I don't know if no one else could play. I think it's just that,
because she's one of the most hated characters in literary history. Literary history, and she kind of made her sympathetic, and so it was like the first person to actually bring something else to the role, where you make her feel like she's a fully realized character, which I guess is in part to Greta Gerwig's script and direction as well. But Frances McDormand in 3 Billboards, and I like that she's included some original characters as well, because there's obviously the ones like the top answers when this gets asked on Reddit are always Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man, J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson in the Spider-Man movies, and often Hugh Jackman as Wolverine as well. And it's like, these comic book answers feel so obvious because it's like, you see a person drawn on the page, and when when you've got so much to build off already, and even something like Timothy Chalamet and Call Me By Your Name, where it's interpreting something from a book that like people could have read and then been like, wow. But one example that I always think of, and it's like, it might not be, I'm sure someone else could play it amazingly, but it's such a brilliant casting, is Anna Faris in the Scary Movie movies.
Oh yeah,
she's so
interesting choice.
She's so good in those movies, and it's like it's like her whole personality is a parody of, the type of person that would be like, it's Sidney Prescott in Scream, and it's like, it's Anna Faris as if you made a parody of like a movie star, like, but she just plays the dumb blonde so well. Those movies are just like, because even like her, it's a weirdly underrated performance, I think, and she's always very enjoyable to watch in those movies. And then you watch like Ashley Tisdale come in and try and do it in the 5th one, and you realize like, oh, this is actually like, it's you have to be intelligent to play dumb properly. Like, and you realize that the amount of work that's actually going into Anna Faris's performance.
Yeah, man, that's a good point. And it's almost like she was a strong female franchise character in a time before people were really like openly looking for that and supporting that. Like, it seems like it'd be the more obvious choice to make the main character in a scary movie a man than a woman, because they're very dude bro kind of sex comedies. But Anna Faris is like, she's great in them, and she's not like a victim of the like sex jokes and stuff like that either. Like, she's just her own character that isn't like compromised. Well, maybe we need to make something that truly celebrates Anna Faris as like a female icon of the the 2000s.
But yeah, that's my kind of go-to left field choice. Do you have any that you?
Nice. Oh, none as cool as what you just said. I'm trying to think of my. I might just cut it there. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head.